You look like the kind of person who campaigns to eliminate affirmative action, only to find out you were the affirmative action hire, based presumably on my race. So that, I think, gets to the heart of why so many of us don't like DEI, because it creates a supposition or suspicion that we are all DEI hires because of our skin color or whatever identity group we belong to that marks us out as different. Because not having been on the other side of the recruitment process, I will never know if I was a DEI hire. That will never be revealed to me. Well, I suppose I would know if I had applied under a DEI scheme, but I have never applied for a job under any sort of a scheme because they didn't exist when I entered the workforce here. But after the introduction of these schemes, it's brought about in many an element of self-doubt where you could ask yourself, am I the DEI hire? Or in your case, judgment from others who look at you and wonder if you're the DEI hire. And it's not a nice feeling, because for those of us who worked very hard to get where we are, we like to believe that it's because of our merit and what we bring to the table, not our superficial characteristics. But yeah, as I was saying, when I entered the workforce in the UK, after a 10-year period where I lived in Canada, I came back to the UK in '99. There was no DEI back then. In fact, I think it was the opposite. It wasn't easy for minorities. And at the time, I was using my Chinese name rather than my English name, because all Hong Kongers have a Chinese name, their birth name, and often an English name, which we're sometimes given at birth, but in other cases, it's chosen for us or we choose it ourselves later in life. And just before coming back to the UK, I had reverted to using my Chinese name as my legal name because I love my Chinese name and I'm proud of my heritage. And there was a movement in the 90s of embracing our roots. That was when wokeism first became a really big thing. So yeah, I was using my Chinese name at the time, but I found that here in London, I wasn't getting job interviews. I was applying for so many jobs, but I didn't hear back from anybody. So I decided to change my passport to reflect my English name. Then I got back to the job hunt, and then boom, I landed an interview with a very high profile corporation and got a great job, just like that. And I can't say if it's because of my name, but I spoke to a lot of people who shared my views that a name that was too foreign hampered your chances of getting a job. You could have a foreign surname which indicated to the recruiter that you were not Caucasian, but you had to have an English first name to show that you were at least westernized and you could speak the language. I know it doesn't actually mean that, but I feel that was the association that recruiters would make, that if your name was totally foreign, and even worse, if they couldn't pronounce it, then you were fresh off the boat. And if they couldn't pronounce it, then none of your colleagues or your clients or anybody that you interact with on the job would be able to pronounce it either. And they also wouldn't know which gender you are. So I believe it was important to have an English first name. And the fact that in every job I held here in the UK, I was one of the only Orientals in my firm suggests that I wasn't a DEI hire. Because I think there would have been more of us if they really cared about diversity and inclusion. There were typically quite a fair number of Black and South Asian employees, but I was generally the only Oriental or one of a very small handful in a big firm. But although I was never knowingly a DEI hire, have I benefited from positive discrimination? Perhaps, because I worked in accountancy for a few years, and I felt very much out of my depth in that role. I'm not really a numbers kind of person. I'm more of a letters kind of person. Languages are my thing, and creativity more than figures. But when I took the job, it was the first decent offer that came along. And at the time, I thought my parents would be so pleased with me, because Oriental parents all want their kids to be accountants, doctors, and lawyers. So I wasn't really doing it for myself, but to please my family. But it also seemed like a good opportunity when it landed in my lap. But I didn't feel that I fully understood what I was doing. It was very much entering stuff in the computer, and the computer churns out the answer. So I did feel a sense of imposter syndrome, that I shouldn't really be there. So I don't know if my being Chinese was part of the reason why they considered me such a good employee when I kind of doubted myself. But as I said, in every job I've had here in the UK, I've always been highly respected by my colleagues and my seniors, because I delivered quality, precise work. I was always diligent. I put in long hours. I was very committed and enthusiastic, and I was likable. I got on with everybody. So all of this reinforces my belief that no, I wasn't a DEI hire. I was just good. And interestingly, in one firm, a very high profile corporate, I was working in recruitment, and this was in the 2010s when diversity suddenly became the new buzzword. And at the time, it felt like something that was really needed, because it was all about examining the fairness of our recruitment process and identifying ways to level the playing field to make it more fair, and challenging unconscious bias. I'm sure most of you in the corporate world have had unconscious bias training. So this was in the early days of recognizing unconscious bias in the recruitment process. And my job was to help redesign the process to account for all of that, so that we could bring more diversity into an organization and an entire sector that was not very diverse. So at the time, it felt like DEI was very much needed. But we did this without adjusting the bar, because I think that's where it all went wrong. Creating fairness and equality is not the same as adjusting the bar so that the pass mark is lower for some people than it is for others. And this is what seems to have been happening in recent years in industries where there is a very high bar, because it's needed, because it's imperative that you only take on the highest standard of employees in roles where there is so much responsibility in their hands, where there is no room for error. And we've seen that lowered in so many cases to the detriment of the entire industry. So that wasn't what we were trying to do back then, but it certainly is what I've been observing in recent years. And it's the reason why DEI has come under such fire. So there you have it. That was my very long response to your allegation that I look like the kind of person who campaigns to eliminate affirmative action only to find out you were the affirmative action hire. So you're wrong, and you're not very smart. But thank you for your comment anyway. As ever, I do hope you enjoyed this video. Please do give it a like, and do leave me your comments if you have any thoughts on any of this. Have you been involved in DEI? Or have you benefited from it? Do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing? And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to my channel, because it really helps my performance with the YouTube algorithm as a new creator trying to grow my channel, my audience. Thank you very much.